The big way to sell to the public is to explain to the public these numbers. That is to say, there are today in the world 30 million slaves. People don't know. They just don't know. Anywhere, even very informed people don't know, because they don't know that slavery is a silent crime. The victims cannot speak. So you cannot interview victims like this by the dozens. You can't, because very often they don't even know they are victims. So it's a huge issue. It's a silent crime. It's a crime which has no proper data. So if you want to back up your numbers, you have to have proper data and say, where are the slaves? Where are they? Etc., etc. We are building that, and indeed what Nick is doing is trying to finance people who can do that data. So it's a crime that you are not aware of. So the goal, and the Thomson Reuters Foundation that I lead is writing about that. We shed a lot of light on slavery. Other media organizations do, and very good ones. So it starts to be spoken of. And then social media, Walk Free is doing that. Social media follows also this issue. So people become conscious, and my hope is that tomorrow, when they buy a T-shirt at $1, they think, well, maybe, I should not, because probably if it is such a low price, maybe they have not paid the people who have done it.
Is non-consumption the way forward, Nick? Do you think that that's one of the best ways for us, to raise our consciousness, but also to to act out the right role?
It's an important way. I think we need to engage governments, we need to engage business, we need to engage consumers. I mean, it's about making people aware that slavery still exists. Right? Once you do that, I think your task becomes immeasurably easier. Yeah. Slavery is illegal everywhere. Right? Slavery is morally abhorrent. There's no arguments about the rights or wrongs of slavery. Right? And even though there are perhaps 30 million people enslaved today, it's probably a smaller proportion of the world's population than it has ever been in slavery before. And governments are starting to pay attention. So if we can build a modern abolitionist movement, and at Walk Free, where I was working, they now have 7 million people who have signed up to the modern abolitionist movement. That's a very powerful force, both on businesses from a consumer perspective, but also on governments, right, to make policy makers prioritise this. They're not going to argue against the rights or wrongs. It's about pushing them to take it seriously and to take the steps that are required, which is what we're seeing now with the introduction of the modern slavery bill here in the UK.
The US are probably ahead of the curve. The law that is being voted now in Westminster is very much following the American law that was done, and in the US they are taking more steps, because indeed to tackle the supply chain, which is 30 years ago, all the big corporations started to outsource their back office and many things. So the making of a T-shirt, bags, shoes, etc., etc. And so you have in this supply chain a lot of steps, and very often in London or in New York, you know the next 2 subcontractors, but you don't know the 10th one. And the 10th ones could very well be the one who have slaves. So let's take the hotel industry, for instance. You are a chain of hotels, and you don't want to deal with the visas of your workers, all these administration things. So you outsource to organizations and very good companies and less good companies the dealing with your staff, which is your maids, etc. And it has happened that these maids are not paid, so they are slaves. So someone that you tip in a hotel room could very well be a slave, but you cannot know it, because they look exactly like a normal maid.
So it's the hidden crime.
Yeah, totally.
And yes, the US is in the lead internationally. Where the UK could put itself in the lead internationally is if they focus more on transparency in supply chains, because the US hasn't done that federally. it's done it in California.
Yeah.
And so if the UK was willing, and it's up for discussion now before the Parliament, to say...
Take on business.
Yeah, not take on business, no, not a heavy regulation of business. Just say to business, we all oppose slavery, and isn't it appropriate that you say publicly what you are doing to fight slavery? That's it. No additional regulation, just a sharing of information about what policies and practices they have in place to deal with slavery. That is very empowering. No business would argue that it is appropriate to be supporting forced labour and all these issues. So I hope that that's one of the issues that gets taken up in this current bill, and that would make the UK a leader in the fight against slavery internationally.